even I make mistakes. This one was a pretty good one, actually. So usually, just about every single time, when I'm changing a motor, when I'm using a junkyard motor, secondhand motor, whatever, I will usually change the flywheels, I'll usually change the wiring harness, I'll usually change the injectors, stuff like that, to keep the original stuff back with the car. Usually I'll only put the, basically the long block back in place, even if it came out of the same type of car. So this Mustang, the one that I showed you with the connecting rod that was wedged up inside the motor and the motor was locked, the car is an 05. So the motor that we got is from an 06. Thing looks identical. Everything about it, the motor is identical. So, stupid me, I just visually looked at the flex plate. Okay, looked the same. Same dimension, I just took a tape measure, ran it across, same dimension, okay. It's got to be the same, right? I'm fighting with this thing. I got this thing in the engine bay, and I'm fighting with it. I'm like, why is this not going in? Like, why is this fighting me so bad? Couldn't figure it out. Finally, when I was underneath there and I was messing with it and messing with it and like, eventually what I did was I actually just laid the engine in the engine bay, and I figured I'll fight with the tranny and get the transmission up into where it needs to be instead of fighting the engine into the tranny. It's easier sometimes to fight the tranny into the engine. So that's what I started doing, and then I was like, why? The torque converter studs are not lining up. Let me show you. All right, so here's the engine bay, and as you see, the torque converter has studs on it. So here's the flywheel off of that motor. This is that motor that I got from the other guy, the other yard, the other shop, whatever you want to call it. And so I was like, okay, here's that flywheel. Now I want you to look. The other flywheel is actually below it. Now if I line up, there we go. See that? See how that bolt doesn't line up? That bolt hole? That bolt hole doesn't line up. That bolt hole doesn't line up. That bolt hole doesn't line up. Bolt holes are in a little bit further. So I figured, all right, not a big deal. I didn't have anything hooked up. I was just, trying to get it set in place. All right, so let's pull the motor back out. All right. Yeah, I wasted an hour. Okay, whatever. It happens. Happens to the best of us. Happens to me. I am not the best of us. So I went and I unbolted the flywheel from the other motor. And check this out. So here we go. See that? That motor came to such an abrupt stop, it broke the flex plate. Yeah, that's pretty impressive actually, that thing stopped that quickly and did that much damage. So now the question is, are we going to have damage to the tranny? That's possible. Just lay this down here. And check this out too. Where are my bolts? Let me find my bolts. Hang on 1 second. It's not these are the original ones from that motor. But let me find the other bolts that I took out. So here are two of the bolts, and if you look close, see the damage that occurred to them? I mean, that's pretty impressive that damage actually occurred from this. This is what it's supposed to look like, and as you can see, this is off of the motor that's going in. But that's actually pretty impressive. It almost sheared them off. So now the question remains, am I going to have damage to the tranny? It's always possible. Could have pump damage, something like that. But we're not going to know till we get this whole thing together. And the other thing too I wanted to show you is this. They use a extender for the crank, basically to run the flywheel or the flex plate out away from the actual motor itself. I'm assuming that if it was a standard shift and I had a flywheel, that this may not be there. Maybe it is there. I don't know. I haven't played around with one of these enough, but this is the one from the good motor, and this is the one from the bad motor. But now, I mean, they look okay. They look very similar. It doesn't look like anything's happened to it. I think that was from me because I tapped it when I hammered it because it was actually jammed inside there. So I'm not going to reuse this. But look at the back side of that too. See that? Compared to that, it's actually galled up. So this thing must have this thing was obviously at highway speed when that happened. So who knows if it sheared and bounced a couple of times back and forth, but I mean, it actually galled that metal from this spinning on there just slightly. And you can see it actually, it's broken away. It's just held in place from, you know, being sandwiched in there, but it's completely busted away. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, if you look real close, you could see the position of, see where that torque converter bolt hole is inside that ring, so to speak, or that landing. And if you look on that, see that's close to the ring gear, where that's further away from the ring gear. So yeah, they must have a different transmission from one year to the next. They must have changed something. Yeah, but it is what it is. Luckily, the guy who we got that motor from, he actually has an 05 with a bad motor in it. He says he's in a process of pulling the motor out right now, and he believes the flex plate is fine because the car does run, just has a bad motor. Whatever's wrong with it, who knows? But he's in the process of pulling the motor out. So he says, you know, we can have the flywheel, no big deal. So hopefully by tomorrow afternoon we'll have another flywheel. Flex plate, not flywheel. Flywheel's for a standard shift. It's got the heavy mass to it. Flex plate is the tin stamped steel, just like this. You know, Fords and Chevys, they use the ring gear on there. Chrysler, at least they used to, use a flex plate where an actual flywheel would bolt up to it, or the torque converter had the ring gear on it. So anyway. All right, so I hope you got something out of that. If you did, hit that like button. If you could, please subscribe. All right, guys, have a great day. Keep wrenching.